Hey everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Speak Smartly and Fluently, where we make learning English fun and easy. I'm Sarah, and I'm here with my co-host Ben. Today, we're diving into a topic that can be a bit tricky for a lot of English learners: how to handle tenses easily in English. Ben, I think tenses are one of those things that can really confuse people, especially when they're just starting out.
Absolutely, Sarah. Tenses are one of the fundamental parts of the English language, but they can feel overwhelming at first. If you've ever been unsure about when to use the past, present, or future tense, or how to switch between them smoothly, you're not alone. This episode is definitely for you.
That's right. And we're going to break it all down today. We'll cover the most common tenses in English and give you some practical tips on how to use them naturally in conversation. So, by the end of this episode, you'll have a much clearer understanding of how English tenses work and feel more confident using them. Let's start with the basics, Ben. For those who might be new to the idea of tenses, what exactly are they?
Good question, Sarah. Simply put, tenses in English tell us when an action happens. There are three main time frames we deal with: past, present, and future. Within those time frames, we have different tenses that tell us more specifically when something happened, is happening, or will happen. The trick is figuring out how to express these different time frames in a way that makes sense in conversation.
Exactly. And one of the key things to remember is that each tense helps us talk about different points in time, and this is true in both written and spoken English. For example, we use the present tense to talk about things happening right now or things that happen regularly, like habits.
Yeah, for example, I eat breakfast every day is in the present tense because it's something you do regularly. Or I am eating breakfast right now is also present tense, but it's happening at this very moment.
That's such an important distinction. So, let's dive deeper into the tenses, starting with the present tense.
The present tense is all about what's happening now or what happens regularly. There are two main forms of the present tense that you'll use a lot: the simple present and the present continuous.
The simple present tense is the go-to for talking about habits, general facts, and things that happen regularly. For example, you might say, I go to the gym every morning, or she likes chocolate.
Exactly. And the present continuous tense is used when we're talking about something that is happening right now. For example, I am going to the gym right now, or they are studying for their exam. It's really useful for things that are in progress at the moment of speaking.
Yes. So, if you're in the middle of doing something, the present continuous is what you'll use. You just take the verb, to be, in the present tense and add the ing form of the main verb, like, I am studying, or she is cooking. It's easy once you get the hang of it.
Now, let's jump to the past tense. This is where we talk about things that have already happened. The most common form you'll hear is the simple past tense, which is used to describe a completed action. For example, I went to the store yesterday, or she visited her grandparents last weekend.
And the great thing about the simple past is that it's pretty straightforward. Just change the verb to its past form. For regular verbs, you usually just add ed to the base form. For example, walk becomes walked, or watch becomes watched. But as we know, English has some tricky irregular verbs like go, which becomes went.
Right. And that's where things can get a little confusing. But don't worry, the more you practice, the easier it gets to remember which verbs are regular and which are irregular. And once you know them, they'll start to feel more natural in conversation.
Exactly. And then we also have the past continuous tense, which is used to talk about actions that were happening at a specific point in the past. For example, I was watching a movie when you called, or they were cooking dinner at 7 p.m.
That's right. The past continuous helps us describe actions that were in progress in the past. It's really handy when you want to give more detail about what you were doing at a specific time.
Now, let's look ahead, literally. The future tense is used to talk about things that haven't happened yet, but are expected to happen. The most common way to form the future tense is with the word will. For example, I will go to the store tomorrow, or they will meet us later.
Yes. And there's also the going to form, which is used when we have a plan or intention to do something. For example, I'm going to meet my friend for lunch, or she's going to travel next month.
Both are used to talk about the future, but will is often used when we're making predictions or decisions on the spot, while going to is used when there's already a plan in place. It's good to know the difference because it helps add clarity to your conversations.
Definitely. For example, if you're talking about a prediction, you might say, I think it will rain later, but if you've already decided to bring an umbrella, you could say, I'm going to take my umbrella because it looks like it's going to rain.
So, now that we've gone over the main tenses, Ben, let's talk about how to use them in real conversations. How do you keep track of switching between tenses when you're talking to someone?
Great question, Sarah. One of the best ways to keep track of tenses is to focus on context. If you're telling a story about something that happened last week, you'll naturally use the past tense. If you're describing what you're doing right now, you'll use the present tense. And if you're making plans for the future, you'll switch to the future tense.
That's a great point, Ben. Context is everything when it comes to tenses. And if you find yourself getting confused, just take a moment to think about when the action is happening. That usually helps clear things up.
Exactly. And don't stress if you don't get it perfect right away. It's all about seeing how tenses are used in real conversations. And that's exactly what we'll be doing in this episode. We'll walk you through some practical examples and common scenarios where tenses come into play.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about some of the most common mistakes learners make when it comes to tenses. Ben, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges?
I'd say one of the biggest challenges is mixing up tenses in a conversation. Sometimes people start a sentence in the present tense and then accidentally switch to the past or future without realizing it. For example, yesterday, I go to the store instead of yesterday, I went to the store.
Yes, that's a really common mistake. And one of the best ways to avoid it is by paying attention to the time frame of what you're saying. If you're talking about something that happened in the past, make sure all the verbs in your sentence stay in the past tense.
Another common mistake is using the wrong form of the future tense. For example, saying, I will go into the store tomorrow instead of I will go to the store tomorrow or I'm going to go to the store tomorrow.
Right. So, it's really important to keep an eye on how you're forming those tenses. But don't worry, mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. The more you practice, the better you'll get. Today, we've broken down the different tenses in English, past, present, and future, and we've given you some strategies to use them in conversation. We also talked about some common mistakes to watch out for and how to avoid them.
That's right. And remember, learning how to use tenses correctly is all about practice and context. The more you listen to and speak English, the more natural it will feel to switch between tenses.
If you want to practice even more, just listen to this episode as many times as you need to master the examples we shared today. And speaking of learning, next time, we've got something exciting for you.
That's right. In our next episode, we're introducing 5 interesting words that you absolutely need to know if you want to speak English fluently. These are words that come up in everyday conversations, and knowing how to use them will definitely boost your confidence. Trust me, these words will make your English sound more natural and help you express yourself better. So don't miss out on this one, it's going to be a great learning session.
Thanks for listening today, and if you found the video helpful and that you're feeling more equipped to handle tenses easily in English, please hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you never miss an episode and share it with others who might benefit. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you, so your feedback is really important to us. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy learning. You're doing great. Bye, everyone.